You're listening to The Stressless Life with Dr. Yip, a podcast about conquering your fears and overcoming anxiety. Our question for the day is, what is performance anxiety? And why is speaking in front of a group so scary? I am your host, Noah Laracy. Let's say hello to Dr. Yip.
Hi, Noah.
Dr. Yip is a licensed psychologist who's board certified in behavioral and cognitive therapy and an expert in the treatment of anxiety and OCD. So from a famous study from 2012, two researchers, Dwyer and Davidson, surveyed over 800 college students about what their greatest fear was. Speaking before a group was a winner at the top of the list, beating out heights, deep water, and even death. So Dr. Yip, why is performing in front of a group so scary?
Well, because just like any fear, you believe that there's a threat out there. And the threat is you being humiliated, you being embarrassed, you being perceived badly. And that affects your sense of self. So there is a real risk factor there.
Performance anxiety is commonly known as stage fright, but this goes beyond just the actual theater stage, right? This can be any type of performance.
Yes, this is any type of performance in a social or public situation. So it could be giving a talk, such as in the research study, to a group of people in school. It could be on the playground, playing a sport. It could be at a football game. It could be a person performing in theater or performing a dance on stage. It could be even a 5-year-old having to raise his hand to ask a question in class.
So you and I are here at a table. There's no one else here right now. But yet, before we started this recording, I had some performance anxiety about this podcast.
You had performance anxiety about the performance anxiety topic today.
But there's no one else here. So why does that happen? Why is it so scary performing in front of a group?
Well, ultimately, we are going to be our own worst critic, right? Our self-value and our self-confidence really comes from our own perception about how we are performing. And if you don't feel that you are performing well, then that is only going to serve as a negative feedback to yourself that your worth might be a little bit diminished. And that, again, is a real threat. So I would say that's one of the reasons. And, also just because it's only the two of us sitting here right now, there is really an audience that's listening to us. So that's the audience.
Be kind out there. So what exactly is it? Is it the fear of screwing up? Is it the fear of making a mistake? Is it the fear of being embarrassed? What precisely is the fear?
It's all of it.
All of it.
All of it. It is all of it. Underneath all of that, though, the common denominator is perfectionism. It is the irrational desire to perform perfectly. And if I am not performing perfectly, then I will be judged. Then I will be perceived negatively. Then I will be embarrassed and humiliated. So the problem isn't just about being judged with performance anxiety. It's about trying to do it perfectly.
Perfection is a very high standard indeed, isn't it?
Standard is a very inadequate word for what really happens for the person with performance anxiety. The person with performance anxiety has unrealistic expectations about their ability to do everything the way that they foresee it happening.
Doesn't performance anxiety become a self-fulfilling prophecy in that you're probably going to be more concerned about being perfect and therefore actually have a lesser performance as a result of this concern?
Absolutely. If you think about it, if you expect yourself to perform perfectly, the reality is perfectionism isn't realistic. And therefore, it's not going to go just as you had planned it to be. And when you didn't give yourself the opportunity to plan for other things to happen, then when you're really in the situation, yes, you're going to find that you're not performing perfectly, exactly as you planned. And what happens to your self-esteem at that point?
So what is it, though, that makes it a fear even worse than death in this study? What is it that's so horrible about it compared to all the other ones? It seems to tap into something very primal in us.
Well, death is scary,
Yes.
definitely. The thing is, once you die, that's it. That's just it. There's nothing more to it. And the reality is, death is inevitable. It will happen. We all know that. With social and performance anxiety, it's about the uncertainty. It's the uncertainty of whether you'll be judged, whether you'll be humiliated, whether you'll be criticized. That is the trigger to the anxiety. And it is the, again, irrational desire to do it perfectly that adds to the burden to the anxiety.
How common is performance anxiety?
Well, we don't have an exact number for performance anxiety only. What we do know is that there are over 20 million Americans who suffer from social performance anxiety disorders. So it is clumped in that same category.
So performance anxiety is a subset of social anxiety, which we covered last episode, episode 5.
Yes.
What do we do about performance anxiety? How can we overcome it? What are some tips for the listeners who might be suffering from this? Some tips for me, perhaps.
Well, the first thing that we have to do is we have to allow ourselves to make mistakes. So that is the cognitive behavioral method. First, we do exposures to making mistakes. We want you to go out and actually fail at things, make mistakes, humiliate yourself, intentionally humiliate yourself. And according to our last episode, we came to the conclusion that it's kind of hard to humiliate yourself when you intend to actually do it. So that's the first part. However, with performance anxiety, there's a special component that is different than just social anxiety disorder, which is, yes, on the one hand, we do want you to go out and practice failing. Does that mean we want to actually foster or promote people to be failures? No, that's not the point. The point is allowing yourself to fail. More importantly, understanding that failure is part of life. And what you have to prioritize isn't whether you will fail or not. It is more of how you will get back up and whether you will get back up. So, other than the social anxiety exposures that we do for people with performance anxiety, we also do a lot of visualizations. And visualizations mean I want you to actually imagine performing well, perhaps even performing to your perfect expectation. And then I want you to imagine failing. So you're off your wagon. And then getting back on the wagon. And why does this work? Well, when we visualize, our minds cannot tell the difference whether it was an actual event or an imagined event. Our bodies just memorize it, and it becomes your muscle memory if you visualize it and you put in all of your senses into it. So we imagine getting on the wagon, getting off the wagon, and then getting on the wagon again. And the importance of that is to teach you how to get back up, because failing is a natural part of performing. So once you fail, how do you get back up?
So with performance anxiety, it sounds like the fear is not just of making a mistake or that I'm going to screw up, but it's that when it happens, it's going to be absolutely terrible and that I'm not going to be able to get back up.
That is the fear with people with performance anxiety. Yes, it's I'm going to fail and I'm not going to be able to get back up. I'm not going to do perfect and I won't know how to get back in the game, get back in the mode. So part of the treatment is first to visualize getting off your game and then how to get back on. And we do this a lot with the athletes that we work with and a lot of the performers, whether they are theater performers or dance performers. So we teach them how to visualize how to fall off the wagon and then get back on. Then we actually practice it in real life. So for a person who is, let's say, a basketball player, we teach them to actually go and practice making your shots. Then we want you to purposely not make your shots. And then how do we switch gears in order to get back into the game and make those shots again?
So you're almost practicing getting back up. It's the resiliency factor. It's be able to come back from the mistake. That's the key.
That is the most important factor. It is not worrying about falling. And that's how the social anxiety exposures help, right? Because you've done so many social anxiety exposures that by now you're like, okay, well, I don't care about that. Though you have to remember, who is the worst critic? You are. You are your own worst critic. So even though you might not care about what other people see, you still care about what you judge about yourself. So then it's, okay, I don't care about what other people think or think of me. However, now I still need to get back up. If we are doing all of the mind traps that we talked about in one of our earlier episodes, where we're doing the, oh my gosh, I can't, I've fallen, then that's not going to help you get back up. You have to be able to believe in your ability to get back up in order to do so. As soon as you start that negative trail of thoughts, then it just becomes a domino effect in triggering more negative thoughts of I can't, I can't, I can't. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So this is a classic example, an actor who's afraid of sort of flubbing a line. How would you have him go about practicing failing and getting back into the performance?
You will speak your line. You'll flub. I want you to imagine the audience cracking jokes at you and you being humiliated. And then, like a switch of a light bulb, you're supposed to get that line right. So it's almost like brushing something off your shoulder and rereading that line, repeating that line in a way that would be acceptable for you.
So you're teaching the skill of coming back from the mistake.
Yes.
So this is a G-rated podcast, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, does performance anxiety ever extend to sexual performance?
Well, yes. Whether it's giving a speech or playing on the football field or the bedroom, it's still a performance, right? And that is the problem. The problem is perceiving sex as a performance. And if you perceive it in that way, then it is going to be a problem. If you are perceiving the performance to occur in a specific way, for your partner to respond in a specific way, and if those things don't happen, then what it will only do is just reinforce to you, feedback to you, that you are not performing to your unrealistic expectation, which will actually deteriorate your performance even further.
So it sounds like with performance anxiety, it's when you go into a situation with a very sort of rigid plan of how things are supposed to go, and then things don't go according to plan. That's what causes the anxiety?
Yes. Part of what we teach our patients to do is mindfulness training. And mindfulness training means your ability to be present in the moment with all 5 of your senses to really experience the current moment for what it is. I know that when I'm boxing or when I'm practicing or sparring in martial arts, if I am not present in the moment, then guess what? I'm going to be knocked out. If I get knocked out and then I come back and go, oh my gosh, what just happened? Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I can't do this. If I start thinking all of those negative thoughts, then guess what? I will be knocked out again because I wasn't present. So it's very important to practice being mindfully in the present so that you can tackle whatever comes in that moment.
So if one of our listeners out there, maybe they have a toast at a wedding this weekend, what kind of tips would you have for them that they can sort of practice in the meantime, next couple of days, to overcome any sort of performance anxiety they might have?
Well, definitely practice that toast. I've seen many people giving toast with their note cards, and it's absolutely fine to have note cards and giving a toast. However, if you are one of those who want to be able to give a toast and not have your note cards, practice in front of a mirror. You have to first know your lines, practice in front of a mirror, practice with friends, practice in front of other people, and then doing it without your note cards. And then if you get lost, well, how do you just get right back on? I can tell you my own personal story. When I got married, I memorized my wedding vows. And when I went back to review the video, one of the lines was missing. And I guess I was so familiar with my vows that I just skipped that line. At the end of the day, I didn't know it until afterwards, and my vows still made sense. So no harm, no foul.
No one complained.
No one knew what my vow was except for myself.
You've also given a lot of talks at conferences. Did you ever experience any performance anxiety? And if so, how did you overcome it?
Well, I have to say that when I was giving my first talk at the IOCDF conference many, many years ago, over a decade ago, I was really, really nervous. And I wasn't really nervous because I was performing in front of a large group of people. I was more nervous because my mentors would be in the audience, and my mentors are my rock stars. So if there was a celebrity who walked by me, I would not know who that person is, because what's important to me are the rock stars in my world, who are the researchers and the treatment providers of anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorder. And they were going to be in the audience. So yes, of course, I felt my nerves because my mentors were going to be there. Some of them were my professors, and they were going to be realistically judging me, right? Because if I was mentoring one of my students who is now giving a talk, well, I want to make sure that that person is going to reflect on me well as well. I was a little bit nervous and tense, and, I just had to take a really deep breath and practice the deep diaphragmatic breathing and some of the relaxation techniques that we spoke about before, and go out there and perform. And I can tell you that the first 5-10 minutes was horrible. I was probably visibly shaking. And then over time, I habituated. Once I saw that I was able to give this talk and I believed in myself, it was kind of a no-brainer.
So do you get nervous or do you get anxiety before you talk at a conference today?
No, not really, because I know the material so well. I know this material inside out, and therefore I can speak it in my sleep. And I have the confidence because I've done it so many times. So in other words, that's very similar to habituation. You become tolerant to that experience.
And have you ever made a mistake at one of these conferences when you've spoken, or said something, someone asked you a question you didn't know? And how did you recover from that?
I basically said, I have no idea. I will have to look into it and let you know. Give me your email.
So you found strategies to sort of bounce back, and you know now that if you're faced with that, you know what to do.
Well, the reality is I never experienced perfectionism in that way. I didn't expect myself to perform perfectly, and therefore, if there was something that I didn't know or something that I made a mistake on, it was possible for me to rebound because I accept that as part of a performance.
Last question. How would you judge my performance today, Dr.
You're doing quite well, Noah. What we need to do is actually video record this next time.
Oh, no. That's a whole other thing. Okay. That's all we have time for today. Thank you for listening to the Stressless Life podcast. You can join the discussion and find more information at www.dryip.com/thestresslesslife. Please write to us with questions and comments at thestresslesslife@dryip.com. Until next time, stay stressless.